the last step is not the journal or the manuscript. It's sharing your research with the people in the community so they know what you've done, like the impact of what you do.
Welcome back. I'm Jeff Kozlowski, host of The Next Step. Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited to talk today to Dr. Aimee Pugh Bernard. She's an immunologist who's passionate about bridging the gap between science and the public. I just finished recording with her. I think you're going to love it. Dr. Bernard is an associate professor in immunology and microbiology at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus, where she also leads their science communication program. Fun fact, she's also one of our own. She earned her PhD in microbiology and immunology from the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry in 2001. And one thing I really appreciate about her is her belief that scientists have a responsibility to share what they know, not just inside academia or behind journal paywalls, but with the people who can actually benefit from it. And she's doing this at a critical time. Trust in institutions is low. Misinformation spreads fast. Dr. Bernard focuses not only on data, but on building trust by showing the human side of science and meeting audiences where they are. In this conversation, we get into how she translates complex science for the real world and the creative ways she uses digital platforms to make that happen. Here she is, Dr. Bernard. Okay, Aimee Pugh Bernard, thank you so much for joining us, aka the Fun Size Immuninja. Thank you so much for being on The Next Step. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
And would you mind if we kick off by explaining where Fun Size Immuninja comes from and the story behind that? If folks don't know, that is Aimee's social handle across platforms, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's at Fun Size Immuninja, and it is the combination of a couple of different things. So this is obviously on air, a podcast. You cannot see me, but if we were to be in person, side by side, I am 5'2", and I have been since I was 12. So I have twins that are 21, and when they were around age 10, 11, 12, all of their friends thought it was funny that I was shorter than most of them. So they started calling me a fun size adult. A full grown adult, but in a small fun size, candy bar package, which I thought was kind of funny. Um, and then the Immune Ninja comes from the immu part is immunologist, and ninja is for about 10 years, my kids and I trained in Taekwondo. So we did Taekwondo together from when they were 8 until 18. And we all became black belts. So it was a really fun way to spend time with my kids and to get a great workout and learn a lot of techniques and maybe surprise someone if I if I ever need to.
Not so
So
fun
that's
size.
yeah, exactly. So that's the whole unpacking of the fun size Immune Ninja.
Thank you for
Yeah.
unpacking all that with us. I love that story. And you did mention immunology, which that is what your PhD is in from University of Rochester. First, I always
Yeah.
like to start with a Rochester story,
hmm
though. Can you talk about how you discovered University of Rochester, how it got on your radar, and why you ended up attending?
Yeah, so I applied to grad school back in, oh gosh, it was like 1996. I started in 1997. So this was before there were websites that would display, um, information for you to find. So I actually went to the library and got a book on graduate schools, and I poured through the book, and you had to write letters to the grad schools you were interested in, and you had to request application materials. So I knew I was interested in immunology from just falling in love with immunology when I was an undergrad. Having taken immunology, I went to Gustavus Adolphus College in Minnesota, which is where I'm from. And I just applied to a variety of programs that had immunology PhDs. And then from there, I did get accepted for multiple interviews. And when I went to Rochester, I just really liked the environment. I thought that all of the different professors that I met with seemed to be like it was a very collaborative institution. I felt like there could be a lot of like connections and kind of crosstalk between the scientists in the departments there. I just got a really good feeling about the department. I also thought that Rochester was a really nice city. I liked that it wasn't huge. I liked that it was also near other cities that you could drive to. Like it's not too far to actually New York City or Boston or kind of the East Coast. So that was really the main reason why I chose it. And I did want to go out of state for grad school. I'd stayed in state for college and thought it would be fun to try something different. So I thought Rochester was just the right decision. And it definitely was. I enjoyed my time there. As you know, it's very conducive to studying because you don't see the sun for a while.
Yes, from about, I don't know, November through March, April can be not sunny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's beautiful in the summer, which Minnesota is very similar.
How did you get into science communication then? So your PhD is immunology, and now, I mean, a big focus of yours is on science communication and, putting science and research in front of the public. How did that become sort of your thing?
Well, so when I went to go get my PhD, my main drive was that I wanted to teach, which most people, thought was a little bit crazy because teaching usually is just like a side component of what you do. But I had always thought that teaching was kind of my motivation for my PhD. And as a result of that, I always thought it was really important to talk to people about science, even people outside of science. So I think just growing up, even in bio, as an undergraduate biology major, and then ever since I was even in grad school, to me it was really important to communicate to people about what I was doing in a way that they could understand. I will admit to you that in the beginning I was probably not very good at it. It takes a lot of practice, but I think over time I became better at it because I did practice. I think also once I had kids, I really wanted them to understand science and enjoy science and appreciate science. So I tried to come up with ways to explain science to my kids, even when they were really young. And I felt like that was something that was very helpful if you could explain concepts to young kids in ways that didn't use jargon. I thought that you could probably explain, your science to anybody. So I just think I always had a big drive for science communication. Um, I also, when my kids were young, started like a after school science program that was built for kids to learn about science. I started writing some blogs about vaccines and the immune system and how those things, work together to provide long-lasting protection. Um, so there were just a lot of different things that I think drove me to doing science communication. So I would say I became a science communicator on accident because I just integrated science communication into all of the things that I did. And as a result, I think I became better at it. And then just through all of the different types of science communication I was doing, I think people started to look to me to help them with science communication. So it really was part of just me wanting to I guess share my love of science and how science works with anyone that I encountered. In fact, my husband thought this was the funniest thing. I came back from a conference one time early in my career, and I was given the award for most likely to talk about science when I was not asked.
Love it.
Which it was a teaching conference, which which probably tells you I must have stood out because I'm sure everybody else there was.
That was an award made just for you.
Yeah. So does that, I guess, does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that you mentioned at first it was something you didn't feel like you were good at,
Yeah.
but the only way to obviously get better at something is to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I love if you can explain it to your kids, you can probably explain it to more people. And we're going to talk about, something along those lines throughout this conversation. And so you came to visit us at University of Rochester just a couple weeks ago, and you had it, or as we record this, it was a couple weeks ago, and you talked about science communication, and a big part of that discussion was, reaching the public and the importance of communicating our science to the public and those that need to hear it now more than ever. Can we discuss just some of the obstacles that are maybe preventing scientific knowledge from reaching the public right now?
Yeah, I think there are a couple, or probably a lot. We'll start with a few of them. The first is that scientists are not trained in science communication. That's not something that's part of the curriculum. I think that science communication training might start to become embedded in curriculum or at least workshops or like you saw career development sessions like at the University of Rochester. But it has not been part of the curriculum as far as science communication to the general public or for outreach. We certainly are. We are trained to communicate to other scientists. So we're trained to write up our research findings with all the jargon that we can. We're trained to submit abstracts to conferences and make posters for our fellow scientists, to submit articles or manuscripts to scientific journals that are also are filled with our jargon and explain our science for other scientists. So I think a big problem is that scientists are trained to communicate with other scientists, but we're not necessarily trained to communicate with the general public. And I would even say that I don't think that, I even work with some scientists that they feel like spending time outside of their lab or outside of working on their manuscripts is wasting time because they have grants and funding to get their research done, and anything that might take away from that they see as negative. But I think what's important is that we aren't going to continue to have funding or public support if we don't share our science in ways that they can access and approach, and they can like seminars at libraries or bookstores or coffee shops or breweries or um, newsletters that are accessible, websites, blogs like this, a podcast. So I think mostly what some of the impediments are, scientists are trained to publish their data that's filled with jargon behind paywalls in scientific journals, but they're not necessarily trained to communicate to people in the community in ways that they can access easily. And then also, jargon makes science seem unapproachable. I don't know about you, but sometimes when I even read titles of scientific articles that are outside of my realm, even titles of some manuscripts, scientific articles are just kind of tricky.
Yes.
And if that's off-putting for me, imagine what that would be for like another, like like my grandma or someone in the community who is not a scientist. So I think that we're not trained to communicate to the public, but we're also trained to put our science in jargon behind paywalls. And then the third element I wanted to add was there is a lot of accessible information out there, but a lot of it is on social media, which a lot of scientists do not use. And a lot of it is mis or disinformation. So it's actually inaccurate or false, misleading information about science. And a lot of people are consuming mis and disinformation on social media.
And you mentioned it, science communication just wasn't a part of cu- um, curriculum, training, anything like that.
Mm.
Is that just because it was just never thought that, that if your research was published in a journal, that was enough? Is that just how it was kind of thought, and then it would trickle its way down to the people that need to know? And now that the public has such easy access to share their own takes on things, now it's becoming like, oh, we need to do something about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like I said, scientists, like I was trained that the final result of sharing my science was publishing in a manuscript. No one ever said, well, then you should go another step beyond and translate your jargon filled research into words that are accessible to the general public and, tell the community what you've done in ways that they can understand the impact of your science. So that's what I'm trying to here at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. Whenever I talk to faculty um, with seminars, I've been asked to do a lot of different trainings and workshops all across campus in different departments and programs and hospitals. And um, I'm trying to get people to think that the last step is not the journal or the manuscript. It's sharing your research with the people in the community so they know what you've done, like the impact of what you do. The other thing I'm trying to get people to think about is we tend to keep all of our information until we have this beautiful final project product for a manuscript. People often don't share their like mini um, celebrations or successes along the way. Like, I think scientists should communicate more than once every 3 years what they're doing. Like, I just sequenced this code and this, now we know how, what we know we have ideas of how this might work or how we could use this for a therapeutic, or let me tell you what I did, last month. Just like people do in lab meetings for each other, like scientists will talk to each other at least once a month in lab meetings. There should be some kind of thing like that where we talk to the community about what we've done. And I will tell you, I know some scientists don't like that because they don't like talking about things that are unpublished.
Hmm.
But I don't think you have to give away all of your secrets
Yeah.
when you're talking about what you're doing. I think we could talk about the mini celebrations or successes along the way to the public so that they know that we're still in the lab, we're still doing things, we're still working. We're not just sitting around until we publish something once every 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and it's part of it could be sharing what excites you, and
Yeah,
then that I think makes you more human to people consuming this stuff, which may help them relate a little bit
yeah.
more or be open to listening.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that might make scientists seem more like humans, which I know we know that scientists are humans, but not a
Yes.
lot of people do, is what if you share your failures?
There you go.
I mean, everybody fails.
Yep.
So you could just say, hey, I spent 2 weeks on this experiment and, it did not work. I'm going to have to try again. But, here are the things that I was trying to answer, So
Hmm.
I even think sharing all of the human sides of science, the joy of science, but as well as failures. I mean, nobody gets a PhD without failing most of the time.
That's what a lot of research is, right?
Exactly. So that I think would humanize it as
Yep.
well.
So I want to talk now. I'm a social media guy, so when I talk to trainees and other researchers, scientists, that's kind of like my thing. But I loved that you brought up so many other ways to do outreach. So like public talks you mentioned, in-person events, like things held at bookstores, coffee shops, breweries, libraries. How do you initiate stuff like that, and any other venues there that trainees might not necessarily consider but are like direct access points to a community?
Yeah. I think if you ever wanted to host an event at, like, say, a brewery or a coffee shop or something, you just reach out to the owner and ask them if they would be amenable to like a let's talk science night or something kind of fun. I think a lot of owners of like small businesses in particular kind of like drawing attention to their business with outreach events. At least that's been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I've even talked to people who will just sit in a coffee shop in a corner like once a week and just put a sign on the table that says, "Do you have any vaccine questions?"
Really?
I'm here. Yes. There's a woman who I talked to who does this in Florida.
Oh,
It was
God
like,
bless her.
that is brave. That is brave. But um, so you don't necessarily have to have a big planned event. You could just have small little ask me questions sessions that you set up yourself somewhere like, coffee shops or breweries. But I think reaching out to people. The other thing, you can also, you can make blog accounts like there's Substack and Medium are two, I think, of the more probably well-known blog sites. The beauty of that is that anyone can make a blog site. I would say
Mm-hmm.
the detriment to that, you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Can anyone can make a blog. Um, so that's and you can I tell a lot of students that want or trainees that want science communication experience that setting up a Substack or like a blog site is a way for them to showcase writing that they want people to see. Like they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to publish anything on that site um, unless they're proud of it, unless it's something that they want other people to see, so they could spend a little bit more time crafting, blogs. They could come up with themes or things that they want to approach. So a lot of trainees like that. Um, there's a site called Science Bites,
Mm-hmm.
and Science Bites is for trainees only, so someone like me who's faculty could not publish there. But
Hmm.
they have all kinds of bites, like chem bites, immunobites, envirobites, data bites. I mean, any bite you could think of,
This is
any
all under the Science Bites
under
umbrella.
the Science Bites. And you would just like they have a tab like, to become an author or for authors. And you would just pitch an idea. You'd have to come up with outlines that would be vetted. I have had a few trainees that have pitched ideas there, and I think that there are people that will reach out and kind of work with you a little bit. I don't know how much mentoring you get, but that's a really good idea or a good way to kind of showcase some writing. Um, Podcasts are another thing. If there's like podcasts at your local schools, like CU Anschutz has at least 4 or 5 podcasts where they will invite. We have one called the Science Bridge. It's part of Project Bridge, which is like a science communication run organization that's run by trainees as well. And I think Project Bridge has, it's not just CU Anschutz, so there's some others, but um, this podcast, they'll invite, you know, faculty, grad students, PRAs, it does not matter, people who just want to talk science. So that's another way to do that. Newspapers like op-eds and commentaries, guest essays. One thing that would be great is when people write about topics that they're very passionate about in their local newspapers. So there's something called Science Homecoming. It's a website that if you go to the website, it shows you an entire map of the United States. You can pick your state and then like click on your state, and then it will take you to different counties, and you can click on the different counties and you can find the local newspapers from where you were maybe born or grew up or currently reside. And newspapers like that are always looking for people to write science, obviously in approachable, understandable ways. But I've done that, and that some of my trainees have done that as well. But these are just a lot of ways that you can, get
Mm.
get started. in science communication.
Grad school is challenging enough. Let MyHub give you a hand in planning your career and professional development. Need CV help? Grant writing tips? LinkedIn upgrade? We've got you covered. From one-on-one career coaching and writing support to wellness resources, mentorship, and fostering your professional network, MyHub is your partner every step of the way. Not sure who can help? That's what we're here for. We'll connect you with the right people and tools to move forward with confidence. You don't have to do this alone. Visit myhub.urmc.edu to learn more. Yeah, I love that. You talked when leading up to this, when we were talking, it's like, it's better to have more there's just, so many options out there. This is like a great menu of ideas to get started. And a big part of it, especially with social too, is just meeting people where they are,
Yeah.
which seems crucial for the scientific community right now.
Absolutely. And social media, of course, is another way, as you know, to get your science out there. Not everyone is interested in investing in social media, but
Sure.
I I think that it is something that if we don't start to put our science on social media or communicate to the public about what we do or what, the impact of science, that we are missing an opportunity because the majority of young people are on social media. And I think there was a Pew Research study where it was like at least half of people 30 and below got their, and this is in quotes, news from social media, which of course, that makes a lot of people feel feel ill that,
Yes.
that news, but I mean there's a lot of great stuff on social media, and I think that, and there's a lot of terrible stuff too, but I think social media, all the different social media platforms, are something that if we don't start to put our science on social media, we're going to miss an opportunity to connect with people, particularly young people who spend a lot of their time on social media. And if we don't talk to them about science, they're going to get their science from wellness influencers and people
Hmm.
who are not actually scientists that are convincing them of things that, are likely or maybe not factual or actual science. So I've started to post quite a bit on social media. Um, and I do some volunteer writing as well as some videos for a platform called Unbiased Science, which is a pretty big platform. Um, but I just feel like it's really important to use our voice to get out to the general public. And I have kind of joined forces with this Unbiased Science as one of their immunology kind of content contributors. Again, it's all volunteer, so in my spare time, but I find it so important. And they get Unbiased Science has a lot of followers, like hundreds of thousands of followers. So what's nice about that is I was writing on my own, but I just wasn't, I just don't have hundreds of thousands of followers.
Not a lot of us do.
So it's nice. And what I love also about Unbiased Science, as well as some of these other really good science platforms, is that they bring together collaborative teams of people. So often when I'm writing something, and this is another way for trainees to think about getting involved, would be if they're fearful of maybe putting something out there on social media just themselves, they could potentially join forces or collaborate with other um, grad students, postdocs, even faculty, or you just kind of come up with some collaborative ideas and maybe, post things together. So it's, multiple people that are, showcasing one idea or, talking about their science.
So there's also then the networking aspect of some of this. Like, I
Yeah.
know during COVID, I started a sort of personal fun podcast. Um, and I remember, and I didn't know this going into it. I think started it because I wanted to talk about a certain topic and I had some extra time. And but the networking that came from that was invaluable. And it sounds like these collaboration opportunities, I think everyone should also always be thinking about their own reputation and of course
Mhm.
careers, and it does open opportunities.
Absolutely. I think, and science is it is a team sport. I mean,
Hmm.
you usually don't do science just yourself. Now, of course, your PhD is your own science story and the things that you've, done to answer the question, your questions, but none of that is really done alone. Like I did a ton of, like, as an example, flow cytometry for what my project was on. Well, there are people in the flow lab that, started up the machines and calibrated them and would, help me understand how to, um, you know, make sure that everything was working properly. And then I would talk to, older and wiser faculty that would help me figure out markers that I needed to follow on the cell types I was interested in. And then for analysis of, you reach out to people to help you analyze things. So science is a team sport, whether or not it's for your thesis that, really is mainly your idea, but you're never really working alone in science. So I think collaborating with people, um, outside of the lab where you're talking about things or writing is also really important. I mean, you also would never see, I can't say never. It's rare to see just one person publish a manuscript.
Mm,
Usually there's at least two people. I mean,
yeah.
sometimes there's one if it's like a review of some big, topic that that person is an expert in. But other than that, most of the time it is a collaborative effort. So I think people outside of science don't understand just how collaborative science is, and not even necessarily just at our own institutions. People reach out to other scientists across the country or the globe to help them answer questions because you want to make sure that the people that you're communicating with who are experts in the field, you're getting as much information from those people as you can. So I remember when I was in grad school, I had a bunch of questions about B cell development, and I reached out to um, a very famous scientist that was in Germany, and I thought, I don't know, he'll never respond. And he did. And I was like, shocked and elated, but then also, yeah, it was interesting. So, I mean, people collaborate all the time, and you never know. If you write to someone, maybe they'll write back.
Yeah, especially, I guess a shameless plug here for the University of Rochester, like, but your particular institution, especially alumni, I feel like I haven't seen a case where an alum didn't want to help out
Yeah,
a current trainee at that institution, so utilize those alumni networks too to get
yeah,
some help.
absolutely. I think networking is so important in science. So collaboration, but then also networking. I mean, a lot of people will find their postdocs or even their openings for faculty positions or lab managers or whatever through networking and connections. Making connections. And I would say in the context of this podcast, it's just as important to make connections outside of the lab and outside of science with the people who the science directly impacts the community. So we should be making connections and networking all across, inside and outside of science.
Back to social media just for a second. When I talk to trainees and others, it's, and understandably so, fear of backlash comes up a lot.
Yeah,
And, and understandably so, social medias can be a bit of a dumpster fire once in a while. And I always start my talks by acknowledging that. I think that's important.
yeah, yeah,
So, but, you know, especially for trainees that are kind of like early in their career, they haven't even really started their career yet. They're maybe in school. What anything they should carefully consider before becoming a public facing science communicator?
yeah. I mean, I think you just definitely need to be aware that it's not everything you write is not going to be positively received. Like, there's
Hmm.
definitely going to be people that see your content, think that you are spewing inaccuracies and like as for myself as an immunologist and vaccine advocate, I write a lot about how vaccines work, how vaccines protect us, how they work with the immune system, how they provide long-lasting immunity. And I'll get comments from people that will tell me, this is evil and vaccines are filled with toxins and, all kinds of just, crazy stuff. But, um, you just have to be aware that that's going to happen. Um, I will also say people who get PhDs typically do not have thin skin, because if you did have thin skin, you will not make it past or you will not make it through the PhD. there's there's a lot of I would say constructive feedback throughout the PhD. So just making sure that you don't take those things personally, I think is also important. Another thing is I would not give away information about, where you live or things like that, just to make sure you protect your personal information. You can always put things that's, how much passion you have for your science, how dedicated you are to your science. So you can kind of show your personality through the way that you view your science. And I know that we say that connecting with people and, being relatable and personable does help connect with other humans. But in social media, if that's not something that you're comfortable with, then connect in the ways that science makes you feel, or how passionate you are for it, or how dedicated you are to your science. I declare my love for B cells and antibodies all the time as a
Mhm.
B cell immunologist. I'm an immunologist, so I appreciate the field as a whole. Obviously, it's very important, but all of my students will soon find out that the B cell and the antibody, those are like kind of, my favorite components of the immune system. And you just so you can kind of personalize it in ways that are kind of fun and science related.
Yeah, so for those that haven't gotten started yet on a Substack or their LinkedIn page, what kind of foundational posts can they consider to sort of help them start defining that niche and maybe build an audience?
Well, you'd want to one of the first posts that people should do is just kind of introducing yourself. You want to introduce, who you are, um, why people should maybe, what's your specialty? Why should they read about you with, immunology and vaccines? Like, is that actually something that you have specialty in? You could potentially share some of, links to articles you've published if people want to verify that it's, that's you do what you say you do. But I would say the first one should be kind of an introduction, and you should probably you can strategize with communication. We have an office of communication here at CU Anschutz, and I know that you do at Rochester as well, because I told your trainees about it.
Yeah.
um, these communication offices, if you're at a university, will often work with anyone to strategize social media, kind of help you kind of figure out, what would you like to share with people? What would be some themes? You might want to consider what you want your voice to be. Do you want it to be kind of like fun and humorous? Do you want it to be more, professional? It could be a mix of both those things. You also want to think about, like after your introductory post, and it would showcase kind of how you want people to see you. um you would then go into maybe what are the themes or ideas or concepts you want people to come to your site for. Why would they say, I want to go look at Fun Size Immuninja's content? I would think that most people would by now know it's about how the immune system works, and vaccines in particular for me.
Mhm.
um, so, what would you want people to, when they think of your account, what would come to mind? Those are the kinds of things you would want to think about. So you could, I would suggest people strategize in advance a couple of types of posts they want to have. So as an example, I run another Instagram for the biomedical sciences at CU Anschutz, and it's CU Anschutz or at cuanschutz.biomedSci. I worked with the Office of Communications. They were the ones that wanted to pick that name, but
Hmm.
I've decided I'm doing like meet the scientists posts of different scientists across campus. I'm doing a Why Science Wednesday where I interview scientists and ask why did they get into science? What inspired them into science? Why did they choose science? What's their story behind science? I've come up with another theme called Science Spotlight, where I will take a recent publication and I will write it out in just a couple of slides for a very short post. What's the takeaway message from the newest article in ways that are understandable? And then, of course, I'll show the link to the article if anybody wants to go, take a look at it. But like, those are some examples. Like, what are the types of things that you would want to showcase on your social media? What would you want people to go to you for? So, like that account, as an example, people will know that they'll learn why did people get into science, who are the scientists on campus, and, kind of like what science are they doing. Um, so those are just some ideas of, has to be a personal introduction, but then from there, what do you want people to know? Why would they go to your site, and come up with some themes for things that you would showcase. Like if it was science, it could be, about your science project. Like for my thesis, as an example, it was, B cell development in the context of autoimmunity. So maybe I could have a couple of posts describing what autoimmunity is and what lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus, the disease that I studied. And I was only in humans, by the way. I didn't do mouse research. I only did
Hmm.
humans, which is weird, or weird for immunologists. But maybe there'd be like a whole theme on autoimmunity, and then I'd have like another theme on B cells and how they work, and then, antibodies and how they work. And so you could come up with ideas to share your science in like kind of digestible bits. I think also people don't understand that for social media, you don't want a manuscript worth of information. You can have like just a little tiny concept and really unpack that, and then your next post can be just another little tiny concept and unpack that. Like people want small
Mm.
snippets of info. If it's too long or too much, they're going to know that you are like the person who, puts up posts that are like, longer than their mother's texts.
Yeah.
They're not going to read it.
Yes. Um, this has been great, Amy. I feel like there's so much immediate takeaways that, if someone is thinking about trying to do more communication, they could apply right now. Any other advice for, our trainees about just practicing their science communication skills? Anything we didn't talk about that you want to hit on before we wrap up here?
I mean, I would encourage people to practice science communication, whether they think that, they're going to be good at it or not, because I have a lot of trainees that will, like grad students in particular, that will say, oh, I really wanted to put up some of my science on social media, but I'm not a PhD yet. And I don't, that's all the whole imposter syndrome thing.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, you are in training. You were you're in this program. You're dedicating your life to science. I'm like, swim in your lane, don't go outside your lane. Like, don't start talking about things that are not what are related to what you're doing. But certainly you can be seen as an expert even if you are currently working on your master's degree or your PhD. So I would just encourage people to try to get into science communication, and just to continue to practice it, and maybe even if they can find workshops or seminars or things that would help them get some training if it's not readily available. I would say, do try to do that, and find that if you can.
I love that. It makes me think of one of my colleagues. Her name is Dr. Elizabeth Murray. She's in pediatrics at our medical center and has, utilized science communication quite a bit in her career, and has, resulted in media appearances and just it does trainings and whatnot. And she's done a couple trainee talks with me, and she'll say like, own your, own that experience. Like that
Yeah.
is your job right now. So you can own that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely agree. I feel like and the sooner people get started communicating with the public or they're, communicating their science than in accessible and approachable ways, the better they will be at it over time. I mean, some
Yeah.
people are going to be gifted right away, but others need more time. But either way, everyone I think should practice that. And I would say integrate it into being a scientist. Just have that be part of your practice, whether you're in the lab all the time or teaching, whatever you're doing, it should be integrated into what you do.
Yeah, part of your work.
Hmm.
So I guess last thing, if folks want to learn more about you, Aimee, or see more of your work, I know we mentioned Fun Size Immune Ninja. Anywhere else they can find you or see your work?
Yeah,
You mentioned a few links throughout.
I'm on LinkedIn, so I post quite a bit on LinkedIn, and you can just Aimee Pugh Bernard. I'm not necessarily at Fun Size of Ninja.
That's right. That's not a LinkedIn name.
But on LinkedIn, the other thing is I do have a link tree.
Mm,
I don't know if you're familiar with Linktree, but Linktree, I just started one a couple months ago, and it's this great site that brings together all of your different things. So I have different
yes.
tabs for, you know, podcasts I've been on, or
Mm.
my science outreach program, or my Substack, and there's just different things. So that would be the Linktree. Has access, or is where people could look for things.
And I have to mention, lastly, for those that may not have been watching and just listening to this, Aimee's dog made a couple of appearances throughout, but I think we eventually, did we put her to sleep? Like, is she that bored now that she's sleeping? Did I hear her
Yeah.
snoring?
Yeah, in the beginning, whenever I do start, whenever I'm on my computer, the first couple 5-10 minutes are she wants a lot of attention, and she's a puppy, so she's new to us. We've only had her
Hmm.
about 3 weeks now, so she's in training. But her first sibling, our older dog, came in and brought her to the dog bed, so that's where they're sleeping. So,
That was very helpful. So maybe it wasn't that our conversation was that boring. I hope
oh
she,
no,
she needs to learn to appreciate science a little
yeah,
more.
yeah, no, I think that they're both probably wide awake just listening.
Well, thank you so much, Aimee. Really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you so much. This was great. It was so fun to go back to Rochester and meet the postdocs and grad students and everybody in the career development office. That was a really fun day. So thanks for that.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the latest episode of the Next Step podcast. If you liked what you heard, please share with other members of the University of Rochester community or anyone you think could benefit from these career stories. And we wish you nothing but the best in your own career journey. Until next time.